Welcome back to the Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast. I'm Kathy Baldwin, and every week I get to sit down with amazing people to challenge the old ways of thinking. And today's conversation is one I was truly excited about. When most people hear the word sales, they think of pressure and quotas and pushy tactics. But here's the truth. Sales isn't just about business transactions. It's about how we connect, how we serve, how we negotiate, and how we navigate conflict in every area of our lives. In my corporate career, I worked in sales and operations. And when I moved into management, I believed my role was to serve the sales team so that they could be the best versions of themselves. That perspective, that sales is service, was very different from the traditional models of selling. And that's why I was so excited to have this conversation with Kirstin Carey. Together we blended the principles of Unlearn the Crap with a human-centered approach to sales, an approach built on integrity, service, and connection. This conversation is more than just closing deals. It's about building businesses that last, creating relationships that matter, and navigating the inevitable conflicts and negotiations of life with clarity and confidence. So even if you don't see yourself as in sales, I promise you, this episode has something for you. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
Welcome to another episode of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up. Your soul is calling. I'm your host, Kathy Baldwin. At Unlearn the Crap, we focus in on the conditioned responses and automatic programming. We focus in on the beliefs and the thoughts and the energy, but also the ramifications that comes into the physical manifestation. How those thoughts and feelings and emotions, how our neuroprogramming or epigenetics all comes out into our physical well-being, changing our gut microbiome, inflammation, and root cause of disease. Everything we say and do matters. And the crap that we need to get rid of is that which is disempowering to us. We all have it. Welcome to this conversation, Kirstin. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. You and I are on the same page on so many things. I can't wait to go deeper with you on some of it.
Me too. So let's begin with, what crap did you need to unlearn so that you could level up?
Oh, how many ways can we get into this crap? The biggest crap I think that I needed to unlearn was the idea of what power is and what being strong is. I grew up in a household, it was very male-dominated energy as far as with the way my father grew up, and he wanted my sister and me to not succumb to a lot of these stereotypical girls being treated like girls kind of energy. So he kind of raised us like boys in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And the idea that you don't get to cry or you don't get to connect your emotions and you should be really good at compartmentalizing how you feel was a big part of my growing up. I'll give you something to cry about kind of energy. There's no reason to cry or show your cards. And so my sister and I really learned early on that crying, emotional people were bad. That you should be able to suck it up, walk it off, and keep going. So I did everything I could to get my father's attention by proving to him, look how good I am at sucking it up, walking it off. Look how good I am at not being emotional. Look how good I am at basically not being a girl. that stereotypical girl. And I even had a coach for softball when I was 8 years old who used to tell us we were throwing like girls. And I remember going up to the coach and saying to him, but I am a girl. Like in all the innocence a 7, 8-year-old can say. And he was so frustrated. He was like, well, I just mean you're not throwing right. And I'm like, so that means we're bad because we're girls. And it was just this logic that I was still trying to process, that this adult must not understand how it is, right? And that really resonated with me too. So I was really heavy into sports. I was a gymnast. I was a softball player. I was really just one of those people who learned that strength was pushing through to the point where your body had to give you more dramatic response than what the little whisper should have been, to learning how to listen to yourself. So I built businesses that way really, really early on. I was building businesses out of my dorm room at 18, 19, 20 years old, and then was picking up really big clients. So that level of success was hitting me. However, it was also hurting me because I didn't know when to take a break. I didn't know when to say no. I didn't know when to dial it back. I didn't know how to listen to self. And in my 30s, I was diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. So celiac disease and Hashimoto's, for those of you who are interested. If you have them, welcome to the team. And I didn't get any real answers outside of suck it up more, take this medication and keep pushing. And so I went through a whole journey at that point, having to learn how to unlearn and how to learn how to let go of the things that didn't serve me for long-term health, wealth, and success and happiness.
Oh, we have a lot of unpacking in that whole unlearning that you did. Before we go too far into this conversation, though, could you please tell the audience who you are and how you serve the world now that you've unlearned your crap and you're leveling up?
What a beautiful question. So my name is Kirstin Carey. I help serve high performers to not burn out through a more effective sales process that's more aligned with who they really are and who they really want to attract. So no more bro-y, pushy, shove it down their throat, trick them into saying yes type of energy. It's how do you get aligned with yourself first, and then you align and attract the right clients and get them to the right answer for them right now. So how do you serve people at that highest level?
Oh, okay. So we are going to be talking about every aspect as well as business and how we can create the best life we possibly can by listening to the whispers.
Yes. Yes. Because if your body has to push past, if your body has to push past the whispers, it'll go to something a little stronger, and it'll go to something even stronger, and it'll start screaming at you. And eventually at some point it'll pick up a 2x4. And in my case, a 2x4 was autoimmune. And in the interim of running my own businesses and picking up, building businesses in marketing and sales for many, many years, once I got diagnosed with autoimmune and I couldn't find solutions that made sense to me, because they were just manage the disease, manage the symptoms, not how do you reverse from them. I went into natural medicine solutions and still didn't get full answers. So as every entrepreneurial spirit will do, I went off and tried to find my own answers. And I did, and I was able to reverse both autoimmune conditions. The symptoms are gone. It doesn't show up on any labs anymore. A traditional doctor will tell you it's because I'm in remission. A more natural thought process doctor will tell you I've reversed it. So we can split hairs all day if you want to, but it doesn't show up in anything for me anymore. But in that interim, in that 15-year span, I developed a program, became a natural health practitioner myself, because I don't do anything lightly. And I opened up a series of restaurants and wellness centers on helping people reverse from autoimmune conditions, finding root cause, and healing in another way. So I did a lot of work around the psychology behind illness, the trauma behind illness. Epigenetics was what I used to teach in functional medicine certification programs. So I love that you brought up epigenetics. There's a whole chapter in my book on it. But after doing that for 15 years and building a 7-figure company out of it, there came another shift for me where I said, I've done what I can do. I've taught a lot of other practitioners. And now it's my time to go back to the business owners, because that's who was mostly coming to us for healing, were business owners and entrepreneurs and high performers who needed to hear, how do you get out of the 2x4? How do you start listening to the whispers now? So that's why I stepped fully back into, even though I was still doing it as a side hustle. You got to love a side hustle when you have a seven-figure business. This side hustle of still working with business owners on their businesses, but that I used to get into so much of the healing and the wealth, the health part to get to the wealth. Right. So now I'm like, okay, I'm pushing past the I'm a practitioner as the forefront. That's the background of what I do now. And the forefront is, how do we help you build, scale a business in a way that you feel so aligned that clients are just coming to you, and you feel so good about the sales process that it's not a thing anymore. It's just part of who you are.
Oh, as somebody who identifies with everything you said, first of all, I was the poster child for the 2x4. I was too long until that 2x4 came and took me down, and had full-blown mental health, physical health, autoimmune, wore my body down.
Yeah.
And so for us to be really good at building our business and connecting to our clients, it has to start with connecting to ourselves.
Yes.
Let's start right there, because we can focus in on the outside. We can focus in on all sorts of techniques, but sales is an inside job.
Yep. Yep. Yes. So understanding how to connect with self is basically the answer to all things. Actually, if you really wanted to just get real broad, it's the answer to all things. But understanding what drives you from an emotional standpoint, what drives you from a trauma response standpoint, that's going to come out in your sales conversations. That's going to come out in the conversations you have with clients or potential clients. So what happens a lot of times, people that come to me, they feel icky. The technical term is icky about sales. They feel icky about conversations around money. They don't like asking for the sale. And a lot of it's because they grew up and have trauma around money and the power that they think it has over them and what it means.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all it is an energy exchange. The money is just a representation of that energy. So in any way, when you're asking for someone to do something, there's something that's being asked of you too. So you have to understand, if you could take the money out of the equation and just say there's an exchange going on at all times, there's always a give and take, a give and receive energy flowing through you and whomever else you're interacting with. Money is just a representation of that. So if you're on a sales call and you look at the energy exchange, you have to ask yourself, what it is that I'm really asking here? I'm asking them to be open with me, so I better learn how to be open and honest with them. If I want to talk about money and I want them to be open about money, I better learn how to be open about having conversations with money. And I learned really fortunately early on at 20 years old, I was interning with a woman who had a 7-figure, and this is 30 some years ago, 7-figure training company. And she used to speak on large platforms and do training for large corporations. And I got to see her do what she does. And I then got invited to a local chapter of the National Speakers Association. And I was with a lot of people who were much older than I was at the time. Usually when you become a speaker, you had to be, years of experience. And most of them were in their 50s, 60s, 70s, which is where I am now. But I was so much younger, but I was so open to learn from the things that they had done. And so I got to hang out with people who were charging 6 figures, who were charging 5 figures for consulting and speaking and training. And that became normal for me. And talking about money became normal. But when I was with my regular people, right, like my friends and my family, and who were barely making in a year what I was charging sometimes for a month or one speaking engagement, it was really hard to have conversations with them where money didn't become an icky part of the conversation. So I fortunately got to hang out with people who were much farther ahead of me, and I got to normalize the conversations that you really need to be able to have at a higher level as a business owner. And when I just knew not to have those conversations. Like, we didn't have that conversation about how much my dad made when I was a kid. Like, that was, how dare you talk about things like that? And, it was weird to talk about money. But when it's normal, you will have that conversation with a client. You will be able to drop numbers that are just numbers. That's it. That's it.
Absolutely. When we can get the emotion out of facts when we're talking about money, then we can actually provide service. But let's come back to this trauma response, because everything is energy, and everything we say, do, and feel will be emitted out of us. So if we have an unhealed trauma to do with money, if we have a disempowering belief about what money is or how it flows or our place in it, if our mindset has our temperature set at a low value, but we're trying to level up, we are going to be in a cognitive dissonance.
Exactly.
So when people are feeling the uncomfortable part of they're getting to the money conversation, or they're getting to the offer part of a conversation, if they start feeling that uncomfortable thing, that's the whisper that their body is saying, hey, you have something you need to work on first before you project it out.
Exactly. And when we can honor that and not make ourselves wrong for it, we can honor that that's an opportunity to move through to another level of healing, and whether it's emotional healing, mental healing, spiritual healing, physical healing, it's another opportunity. When you get that feeling of uncomfortableness, that's a moment for you to say, how do I become more comfortable here? What is it about this conversation or this moment that's making me feel uncomfortable? And where physically in my body do I feel that discomfort? That's how you start bringing the mind, the emotions, the spirit, and the body back together into one place. Some of us are so good, especially business owners, at separating those things that we don't realize the whispers because we can't feel them, because we've disconnected the wholeness of who we are.
Yes. And that is why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, because we were put into a world of compartmentalization, of siloing our lives. But we cannot cut our head off and bring our head to work and leave our body at home.
No.
We are,
as much as that show Severance wants to show us that, we can't do it for a reason, and we shouldn't try to do it.
No. So how do we identify the uncomfortable feeling? I'm sitting here in front of you, and I have something that I know can help you. And you have expressed the need that I have. But I'm uncomfortable to go there.
Yeah. So your potential customer is going to be uncomfortable to go there. Right?
Yes,
so if you So years ago, I was asked to speak for Verizon. It was a really big deal for me. I was 22 years old, and I had not charged a ton of money at that point to speak on large stages for organizations like that. And I went to one of the other women in the National Speakers Association that I was familiar with, and I said, Verizon has asked me to speak. How much should I charge them? And she said, well, how much have you charged before? And it was like $750. And again, this was like 30 years ago. And it was an enormous amount of money to me at the time to get paid to speak. I would do it for free. And she said, okay, well, you charge $5,000. And I said, oh my God, $5,000. And she said, you charge $2,500. And I said, oh, $2,500. And she said, $1,500. And I said, $1,495. And she said, that's how much you charge. And I said, how do you know? She said, it's because it was the first number you said without laughing, without hesitating, and you just rolled with it. And I was like, whoa. It wasn't how much they were going to pay. It was how much could I even say with the confidence without laughing. So it's just a number, right? And when you start to recognize your own hesitation and it's a vibration. It's a measurable vibration. This isn't like woo-woo. This is actual science. They can measure a vibration coming off of you. And if you're in fear or you're in concern for your worth, that will vibrate off of you, and the other people, even if they're on Zoom or they're right in front of you, they will feel that vibration. They won't consciously realize they're feeling it, but they will know it. And then they will also feel that vibration to the point where they may be becoming concerned. They don't trust it. And in a world where in the 50 some years I've been alive, I've never seen the level of distrust the way that I see it right now in business, in the world, in organizations, outside of the United States too, right? We're seeing this in Canada, we're seeing it all over. So your belief in self has to be there, just quietly hanging out, so that your prospect not only trusts that you are saying what is true, but that you trust your own process and you trust your own self and you trust what's coming out of your own mouth. So if you hesitate or trip over or are worried about your offer, it doesn't frankly matter if you're charging $100,000 for it or $100 for it. It's going to come through as something not to trust from the prospect.
Yep. I love, most people don't know this about me, but my previous career, 40 years, was in sales and operations. And I remember one case, I was working with a salesperson who I could not get her to understand that her limitations were between her own ears. And she had so much potential, and she had such an amazing personality, and she had product knowledge, and I mean, she had everything, but she could barely meet any sales quotas. She was scrimping by financially, and her job was in peril. And so I was working with her, and I remember saying to her, you need to talk about the client's budget. And she was appalled. I could never ask somebody that. It was as if she was digging into their personal sex life. To ask them what their favorite position was in the bedroom. That's how it was so appalling to her. And when I was able to demonstrate to her by saying, okay, let me work with your clients with you. And so what's your budget? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And when we went through the whole qualifying process, and I was just asking questions with zero judgment, zero bias, because I was just unpacking their situation. Curious, how can I help? Where is it? And just looking at all of it and not having an emotional reaction to anything. Where this salesperson was afraid to close $1,000 deal, and the deal closed at $25,000 because the $1,000 did not meet their needs. And that's where their angst were coming from. And the salesperson had a belief that it was because it was too much money. When it wasn't money, it didn't solve the problem. So why am I going to spend something that's not going to solve my problem? But the problem was solved.
You understood that it meant nothing personally to anyone. It was a factor, it was a number, and that was all, to get them to an answer. And if your goal is to get them to the right answer for them, you will ask the questions that most people won't, because they think it's wrong to ask that question or it's wrong to push back. You did something really brilliant there, where you went in with absolutely no attachment to the outcome and no attachment to their answers. And they felt that no attachment to their answers, so they felt open enough to say it. And it's funny that you even, equate it to sex life. I have a really good friend who's a sex therapist. She will say things that I would not say in a regular group, because it's normal for her to ask these questions, but the way she does it even if it's like in somebody's like literal thought process in their bedroom, right? She's able to ask questions in a way where she's not attached to their answer. You can clearly feel there is no judgment no matter what you say. And she helps people over decades of trauma quickly because she's so normalizing in her conversation too. So no matter what the subject matter, no matter what the thing is, if we can make it just so normal every day, I have no attachment to your answers and I have no judgment for it, but I need this information in order to help you. It's amazing how people will open up. So often I'm on sales calls with people who will say things to me like, I've never told somebody this before, or, oh my gosh, thank you for asking that, or thank you for making me feel safe enough to talk about this. And sometimes it's a topic that most people like, how do you not feel safe talking about that thing? But there's a trauma response they have around it. And sometimes I'm on sales teams, I'll step onto my clients' sales teams, or I'll step onto sales teams to get an understanding of what they're reacting to or what's going on. Because I'll have the sales team tell me, oh, everyone's broke, no one has any money, no one wants to do a yearly program, nobody wants to do a short program. They always have a reason why they're not selling. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me go see what my response is. And I will close. In the last time I stepped on a team, I closed literally 9 times more than other women on the team. And they were like, how did you, it must be your skills. I'm like, listen to my calls and listen to where you get hung up. I have no attachment to their outcome. And I tell them that. Look, I'm asking these questions because I'm trying to help you get to the best answer for you and get clarity. Is that okay? And they say, yes. And I said, I have no attachment to your yes or your no. I just want to help you find one clearly. Is that okay? Yes. Okay, cool. And then we start talking. And when I ask the question, I ask it with no attachments. Seriously, it's a skill you do have to learn. But when you realize they'll open up more to you, you're not offending them. And if they become offended, which I can't think of one time where I ever asked somebody where somebody said, I'm offended. But if they were, that's still their stuff. And that's information for you that's helpful. But I had another woman just earlier this week. She brought a book with her from another bro-y sales guy. And she read a passage from the book. And one of the recommendations he was making when somebody puts up a wall and they say, no, I'm not going to make this decision right now. His response was to tell that person, well, you said you cared about this and achieving this. You must not care about it more than you care about your money. That was written in a book.
I read that book. I know who you're talking about.
And I was like, whoa, let's dial that back for a second. I understand where the premise is of what he's coming from. It's they're telling you something's important to them, but now they're telling you the money is more important. Yes. And you can absolutely mirror that back to them, but do not use shame as the way to do that. You can lean in with them and say, hey, I'm seeing something that's incongruent. Are you open to me helping you see a reflection? I've never had somebody say no, but they have the opportunity to. And I've done that with people where I hear them saying this is important, but the money, now I can't find the money or I can't. So I'm like, okay, this is super important to you, but I'm hearing that you're saying that it's not as, it's incongruent with when you said this was important, but now you're saying that the money is too expensive. So help me understand. Is it that you don't feel like the solution is going to help you get to where you want to go, that you don't trust yourself getting you where you want to go, or that you don't feel that this is the right program for you? I'm just trying to understand so I can help you. And usually that's when they're like, well, you know what? I've done this before and I felt like I had the right answer, but I didn't show up in the best way, or it didn't work for me and I don't trust I can do it. If you've got somebody who's feeling that way, but you spin them into a shame spiral, you're losing that sale not only forever, but you're losing anyone else they could have referred to. So the idea of challenging somebody in shame, I think, is not the best way to do it.
Absolutely. Shame is one of those emotions, whether we feel it or impose it. It is an external emotion, and there is no lower vibrating emotion other than death.
No, it is the deepest running one. And it will vibrate through in ways that I can't even explain how deep that goes. But it's one of the most visceral responses. The worst, lowest vibration. I agree.
Yeah, it will shut someone down totally. Let's unpack this a little bit, because I don't get to have these sales type conversations on Unlearn the Crap very often. I think I told you that when I had my breakdown and led to my breakthrough, that made me come to this place of empowering people through all aspects. I put that part of me to the side. So this is a fun place for me to relive and help people understand that everything we do is sales.
Yes.
I want to talk about qualifying.
Okay.
I want to talk about qualifying, because so many people try to believe that every single client, that whole ABCs, always be closing.
Always be closing. Yeah.
Means that every single person we come encounter with is our ideal client. But if we looked at qualifying for us to determine whether they are our ideal client and we are their ideal solution before you ever go into that. And that's what we're trying to see. Do we have a match? Do we have alignment? Are we connected? And that's what the qualifying process is about. It's not about trying to squeeze somebody through a funnel like a tube of toothpaste.
Nobody likes to be toothpaste. I think that's a new book title.
I think it is. I think you should
write that one down.
So what is your, because that crap we were taught, that sales is a set of behaviors and we need to just keep doing and saying the right words. And if we're not closing the sale, there's something wrong with us.
Yeah, that was talk about shame, right? So that's a lot of how a lot of sales teams are run, is that if you're not closing these, there's something wrong with you, you're broken. Now, I do like to use it as a check to say, okay, if you're not closing up to a certain amount, there's something wrong in the process. Either there's a way that you're coming through in the call, there's something with the leads that are coming in. Like, let's get a handle on where the kind of broken or fractured pieces are. So, but there's nothing wrong with you, right? But I want to look at, how do we do this? And with different teams, I do different things as far as it depends on how many leads they have coming in. It depends on how much they're paying for the leads, how we qualify ahead of time. So there's multiple processes that we typically go through for most people when they're doing high ticket sales that are booked to a call, and then that's going through from there. Now you could do events and things ahead of time that help lead the right people to you. There's a form typically that we have people fill out when they're booking the call. So you ask very strategic, specific questions, but you don't necessarily just shut everyone down because they say they don't have any money. I can't tell you the number of people I have sold into 5-figure programs, paid in full, who put on their form that they are broke. So you want to do a kind of a combination. But if you don't have a ton of leads coming in, which is not most people, you don't usually have so many leads coming in that you have to slow down the lead flow. I recommend, especially in the beginning, you take all of the calls, but you use that call as a 15, 20 minute first initial call to funnel out the wrong people or filter out the wrong people. So with a lot of teams, especially if there's something more difficult to sell, which I sold a health program for people in autoimmune for 15 years. That's, I think, a slightly more challenging thing to sell, because you have people showing up on a call who are trying to get away from feeling horrible than trying to reach towards. So they're feeling like crap. The people who are feeling like crap show up on the call. They're a harder vibration to move into a hope space, into a visionary, I can see the other side space. So I always like to do those as 2 calls, at least, where we do a first call where that's the filter. And it's 15 minutes. It's let me get a feel for this person. Let me get a vibration on this person. Let me ask them some very specific questions and see how they show up. That's the first way that I typically have people filter when there are a lower vibration energy showing up. If they're a higher vibration energy where they're like, I can't wait to start my business and I want to go to the next level, if they show up in that way, usually that one call can actually be an easier close. And typically I'll do the first call as a half hour, 45 minutes. So they're different. Doesn't mean they'll close on that call, but it's different. So, but I want you to be watching for how are they showing up on this call? Imagine working with them as a customer or a client. Are they going to be the bad apple in the group of people that you're currently working with? Is it somebody that I get excited about working with? Is it somebody I can see the other side for them? Is it somebody who's asking for help, they just don't know how? Or is it somebody who wants to stay and they're stuck? Is it somebody who's fighting for their crap? And so that's a big one. I mean, I've literally had calls with people for health calls and business calls and all of the other ones in between where I've stopped the call and said, hey, look, I'm getting this feeling that right now isn't the best time for you to do X. And sometimes they'll say, well, why not? And I said, well, I'm getting this energy that it sounds like you're in more fear and that you need to stay where you are right now than what it's going to take to move over to the other side. Because getting to the other side of anything is never easy. There's always a challenge. There's always action that has to be taken. How are you feeling about that? Again, no judgment. Sometimes they'll say, you're right. I'm in it. I need to be in it. This is my identity. This is who I've always been. Or I'll say, like with somebody with autoimmune, let's say fibromyalgia, I'll hear that, like, that's my identity. I'll hear it. They won't say those words exactly, but I'll feel like, who would I be? So I'll say to them, who would you be? So let's pretend we're on the other side of this. Who would you be without the fibromyalgia? And sometimes it paralyzes, like you can feel them shut down, like go, because that's who they are. They're in all the groups to talk about fibromyalgia. They're in all the places where they're you to stay where you are. That's their identity. That's who they are. They're part of nonprofits that support it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But without it, they don't understand who they be. They will not be able to psychologically let go of that identity. Or they're not ready to right now.
Yes. And if you, as the salesperson, is attributing what they're going through and their identity as something to do with you, and their decision is the outcome of how you will see yourself,
right?
Now you have two people who cannot connect. You've got two positives or two negatives, of the totally each other. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's part of your job as the salesperson when you get to a point where you feel like they're fighting to stay in their space now. I mean, your job as a salesperson is to help them envision where the other side is, see where they are now, and then show them, if you think it's right, show them how your solution is that bridge from where they are now to where they want to go. If they're fighting to stay on the side they're on right now, there's no reason to even show them the bridge.
No,
right? Because
absolutely.
They're not going, they want to stay here. So I will pull that through and say, hey, I'm just getting a sense that you feel more comfortable staying where you are now. And it does feel hard to make a change. Am I sensing that correctly? And sometimes they'll say, yes. And I said, okay, so what brought you to this call? And sometimes like, oh, I was just curious. Oh, I just wanted to know. I'm like, okay, so it sounds to me right now that it's not the right solution for you. Am I getting that? And they're like, yeah, you are. I'm like, okay. Cool. And I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. Like there's a point where, okay, cool. I got to where we needed to go, which was the clarity on, is this the right thing for you right now? But then there's the other people who are like, well, wait a minute. I really do want to go to the other side. I don't know how to find that place in me. It's okay. Well, we can talk about that. I can help you find that. Do you want to find that? They're like, yes. Okay. Then Absolutely. They fight to get to the other side.
But it's all curiosity. One of the questions that I would ask someone who was in that place would be, right, my job here is to help you make a decision. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm here to help you do. It sounds to me that the decision is no. Do you want me to help you accept that decision, or do you want me to help you work through it?
So beautiful.
And then they realize that if they don't make a decision, if they want to sit on the fence, I'm going to make the decision for them and say the answer is no.
Yes. And then that's when the real version of them steps up. The real version. But what you did, which is so beautiful psychologically, is that nobody wants to feel like they don't have control. A lot of people give up control But it's not because they don't want to be in control. They want to feel like they're in control of what's going on. But you still, as the salesperson, have to hold the space of not superiority, but of power, that you're controlling the direction of the way things are going in a way that makes them feel safe. What you did was so brilliant, and this works with people, with children, with dogs, actually. This works with everyone, is when you can hold that space and hold that energy for them, that you're sure and you're in control, it's all going to be okay, but they have choice. Everyone feels better. So what you did is you basically say, I'm getting the sense that it's this. Would you like me to help you feel better about that decision? Or do you want to know how to get out? Now you've given them choice, but you've controlled what those choices are. So you were still actually ultimately empowered. You help them feel where they have their empowered self to step up into it. And that's a beautiful way to do it. You're not shaming them into it. You're not tricking them into it. You're helping them step into their power and give you the answer that's going to serve them, at least today.
Absolutely. And that comes right back to our unlearning the crap.
Mm-hmm.
When we carry these wounds in, when we carry our belief systems in, and we believe that everybody thinks and feels the same way we do. And there's not a human being on this earth that thinks and feels the same way that any of us do.
No. But ultimately, we all want to feel seen, heard, and understood. So if you can go into any conversation and think, this person wants to feel seen, heard, and understood, and I also want to feel seen, heard, and understood, you can see where conflict can arise, and you can see where you can join together and be on the same side, as they say, of the table. This doesn't have to be an adversarial process. You don't have to trick them. You don't have to have the perfect phrasing. But if you can come into the conversation with an openness to feel curious about how they're feeling seen, heard, and understood right now, and do your best to hold that space, it's going to work out exactly the way it's supposed to. Exactly.
Absolutely. So while we're here, we've touched on the sales process, we've touched on objections, and we brought everything to the empowerment of us, that we're in control of every situation. And when we hand the control over, it's like getting into the car, sitting behind the driver's seat, and expecting the person in the back seat to actually be navigating.
Right.
We're setting ourselves up for. So how do we deal in the business world when we're talking about how everything we do, say, feel, we bring into it? How do we translate that to conflict? And I want to hear your opinion, because I obviously know my own.
So let me make sure I understand the question correctly. So when we're in that sales call and we don't feel comfortable, how do we translate that to conflict, or how are we doing it subconsciously?
How do we deal with a conflict situation, business, personal, and still remain in control, and understanding that those triggers, those emotions, those traumas, those everything is information to us?
Yes.
That it's not meant to disempower us.
No. So, I mean, I think that's the answer, essentially. Like yesterday or the day before, something happened where it triggered me into a space where I really felt out of control. I felt like I didn't know anything. I spun into an old trigger that's deep, deep, deep. And every now and then, when I'm just kind of not feeling my best, it can show up. And then all of the pieces, like the whole story shows up. I'm not good enough, and I shouldn't be doing this, and I should go get a job at Starbucks, and who do I think I am? Like, it all spun out. And I was like, oh, Kirstin. So I said, okay, this is just a vibration. This is just an energy, and it's just an opportunity for me to see a story that is no longer true, but still may have an energetic hold, where I get to just be with it. And it didn't feel good. It did not feel good. And I was the master of pushing away what did not feel good. And I said, this is a great opportunity for me to up level, because I've done so much work. And here I have this opportunity. And again, it did not feel good. But when I got into this is just a story. It's an old story. It's not a true story. all I have to do right now is sit with it and breathe, because I also remember what it's like to not feel this story. And I got to play into that where I go, and in 10 minutes or in 5 minutes or at some point later today, I'm going to feel that empowered self again, because she's not gone. she just took a minute. she went to the bathroom or something. She's not in this moment, but she's still there. So all this is an energetic vibration to something that I made true that is not. So when you can start to see those moments, like if you're in a sales call or you're in a conversation, you're in a moment of conflict, and you can say, all this is a moment of conflict. It does not mean who I am. Does not make me who I am. It is not true. It is just a momentary response. Then all you have to do is just be in it until it's not there anymore. You don't have to do anything other than just get back to you. That's why it works really well. So if you've ever seen somebody who's having a panic attack and the old thing is to give them the paper bag to breathe in and out of, do you know psychologically why that actually works for people to calm down? Because people think it has to do with the oxygen and all the carbon dioxide and all of the things. It's because psychologically what's happening is they have something else to focus on. They focus on the sound of the bag going in and out, the bag actually going in and out, what's happening in that moment. It refocuses back to this moment here and now, the only thing that actually even matters. Not to what happened that got me here, or not to what's coming for me, but what's here. And it brings you back to your sensory being, because you're hearing it. Sometimes you're smelling the brown paper bag. You are feeling it. You are seeing it. You're bringing back into your sensory being, which is all we really are. We try to intellectualize it all, but we're really just sensory beings first. We sense things. We feel things. That's why that works. So when you start to recognize this, just know that you're higher up than you were 10 minutes ago, because now you see it. Just because you can't get out of it instantaneously doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, but you see it, which means you're online, you're aware, and it's not just driving you underneath the surface where you're unaware.
Yes, yes. And now that you've done that exercise of awareness for yourself, now you can recognize when somebody else, a potential client or a coworker or a family member or a loved one, whatever, is being in that trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about you being part of that ignition. It's about understanding that something has happened within them. And now we need to get back to that calm place, mm-hmm. where we're all focusing in on the breathing, where we're all coming back to the moment, and we're letting that energy move through us without it being an attack on us. And
no,
now,
it's not about us.
But that's what happens so many times. Yeah. People attached and connected to that energy instead of staying disconnected.
Yeah. So if you've ever seen any of those nature shows where the gazelle is running along and she's with the pack and everything's fine, and then she stops for a moment to drink from the brook, and the lioness sees her and comes for her, and they go chasing through. A lot of times the lioness will grab them, take them down, and the body's response for the gazelle is to shut down. It's the fight, flight, or freeze response. She shuts down. She freezes. She becomes paralyzed. She gets dragged off back to the den. And a lot of times they don't kill them on right there. But what will happen is they'll leave them thinking that they're dead to go get something else that they need. And the animal, the gazelle, sees their moment. They get up. They book out of there, like they get the heck out of town. And then when they reach safety, they shake. And they just shake. And that's the trauma response completion. Most of us don't get the opportunity to complete our trauma response. It gets stuck midway and we never complete it. So there's a lot of different techniques and modalities and things that I use to help somebody get into that subconscious space and actually complete the cycle. But when you become aware, that's one of the most important pieces of completing the cycle, or not falling back into it after you've started the cycle completion. And it can happen 30 years later. It doesn't have to happen in that moment, because time doesn't matter in a trauma. Believe it or not, it actually just needs the completion, whether it happens 30 minutes later or 30 years later. So in that, the awareness becomes really important, and we become back into our conscious mind isn't trying to override all of our things, and our subconscious isn't driving all things. So that's a trauma completion. So if you're feeling that trigger, just be like, hey, there's an opportunity for complete this cycle and at least become aware it's happening and see it on other people. Like you'll never look at somebody's response the same way ever again now. Because you're going to go, oh, I get it. They're being driven by something that is underneath their conscious thought process. Okay, Absolutely. It's not about me.
And then the sales role is about creating the safety and the security and the foundation and the grounding for that person to complete their cycle so they can now re-engage with their prefrontal cortex, their intelligent brain, so they can make a conscious, well-informed decision, yes or no.
Yes, yes, and yes. And then you see a yes.
Yes, because when we're in that emotional response, when there's conflict, when there's heightened any type of emotion, negative, positive, it really doesn't matter. That heightened emotion is information telling us that there's something underneath.
Yes.
We aren't heightened. We aren't in those extremes unless there is information that is vital that we need to address.
Yeah, and it's attached to our ability to feel safe, to feel like we're in control, to feel like we are not going to be injured and we're not in danger. It's a whole big speech. I mean, it's the whole fight or flight response. And it's something that could be very small and you may not see it, that triggers them back into a moment of feeling abandonment or feeling shame or feeling fear at some level. And you want to honor that that may happen on a sales call, because most people that are on a sales call are there to change something that's going on that they want to be different. So when you're challenging something that is the now, trying to help someone move into something in the future that they want more, there is going to be a moment of conflict because the subconscious wants to stay where they are right now because that is what is safe, because that is what they know, even though they're asking for it to be different. So you may run right up against that, not knowing. And there's moments of trigger, even in some of the most simplest of sales opportunities.
Yes, because the dollar value does not affect that decision process.
No. That's where money has nothing to do with it at that point. And that's where people will find gobs of cash do something when they tell you that they're broke, because they've now valued what that is, and they will change things to make that happen. So we always find money for the things we find to be important and of value. Always. We figure it out. But it's still not your job to, it's your job to help them find that if they want that, but it's not your job to shame them around that. And again, back to some of the other sales techniques that we have both apparently seen in the marketplace.
Well, you and I both see sales as a empowered, heightened, leveled up version of humanity, of service, of give and take, as part of the universal law of rhythm, of reciprocity, of compensation. And when we see it as part of that flow, and we're not coming at it from a place of low vibrating emotions, of fear, of greed, of it being about us. Because we can't build a business where we're serving others if the only focus we have is on ourselves. We must do that inner work ourselves first before we come out into the world.
Yes, 100%. Hallelujah.
I have loved every moment of this conversation, and I'm sure that our audience has as well. So when they're listening and they're thinking, where am I going wrong? Why am I not getting the sales as much as I want? Why is my business not moving in the direction I want? How can you help them, and how can they find you?
That is a good question. So, I mean, the first thing is I want to just understand where they're coming from. So we'll have a conversation for me to understand what their issues are, what their challenges are, things like that. And if I can help them, I absolutely will show them how to do that. And if I think there's someone better than me or there's different process, I can also refer them to the best places for them. But they can go to evolveminded.com. I have free resources on there right now. There's the 7 biggest sales mistakes costing you high ticket clients and how to fix them. They can download that report. But they can just book a call with me. We'll have a good 20 or 30-minute conversation. I'll collect more information to understand where they are and where they want to go. And again, if I have a solution to them for them, we can talk about that. But if I think there's a better solution, I'll give them that too.
I love what you're doing. You're helping to not only level up each individual salesperson in business, but in the process, helping to unlearn the crap about pressure, shame, any of those negative emotions that are in business, because we are all integrated human beings.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Yep. And that is not woo-woo. That is actual measurable stuff. So yes.
Yes, I think the whole identity of using the word woo-woo was about part of the control and the manipulation that we've been taught that we must unlearn that crap.
I know. Because people that are empowered are harder to manage. So they're going to think for themselves, and it's a lot harder to manage a lot of people who are thinking for themselves. So when you're a think for yourself person, you often feel like the black sheep. You feel like you don't fit. There's a reason for that, right? You sense something there's a higher opportunity for you, and that doesn't always fit to manage a large group of people. So hallelujah if you feel like you're kind of off, but there are other people that are off like you are too that are doing amazing things. So find your people, find those people who vibrate in that energy and that can be around you to help normalize how you feel and how you think and how you're moving through the world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kirstin, for your passion, your insight, your knowledge. Thank you for your time. I have enjoyed every second.
Thank you for having me. This is a good time. This is a great conversation.
Until next time, continue to challenge everything so that you can accomplish anything, knowing that you can unlearn any crap at any moment in time and level up to your best self. Your soul is calling and the world is waiting. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast. If this conversation spoke to you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and leave a review. That simple act helps amplify this important work of unlearning the crap that holds us back. This show is built on the foundation of my 3 books, Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul is Calling, a roadmap to release what no longer serves you, How I Unlearned My Crap, which is my raw story of breaking free and the patterns that I needed to unlearn. And the 3rd book, The Unlearned Life, an AI-powered ritual system for truth transformation and personal empower. If you're a podcaster or you want to be, this is for you because 85% of podcasts fail, not because of the message isn't powerful enough, but because the back end can be overwhelming. I created the Finally Podcast automation system so your voice doesn't become a statistic. Your message is too important to be silenced by burnout, tech chaos, or even wasted time. My mission is to support not only my guests and you, the audience, but also every podcaster who's ready to level up. So until next time, keep unlearning, keep leveling up,